Hi guys, welcome to today's video. In today's video, we'll look into a scenario in which we continue our alternate history of the world series. And at this point, tensions between communism and democracy is at an all-time high. With democracy in Africa and North America becoming more close, with these two leagues basically signing an agreement that one of these alliances get attacked, the other will come to defend. And with one thing happening is that the Hungarian puppet state troops exercising, let's say, because that's what they were doing, ends up crossing the border without realizing. And so they say. Yugoslav forces see this, and they attack back. And then this ends up causing tension as both sides are blaming each other. And this ends with the United Soviet Socialist Republics declaring war on Yugoslavia. Why would it go this far? Because, saying that was an attack on them, which basically means all the alliance joins in, including Germany, Mongolia, Xinjiang, and the many puppets from the Middle East War. Why am I calling it the Middle East War? Because it was. And they all declare war upon one nation. And to be in particular, it's Yugoslavia, which a demand is sent out saying that if you don't withdraw from Yugoslavia immediately, this would mean war. But the German Republic doesn't agree with this and moves in. Well, the communist Germany, along with communist Russia making it, and the many puppets making advances. They are demanded to immediately withdraw, or that would mean war. With France calling on every one of the allied nations, which are these, to join the war. All of it, as Yugoslavia is called, the article in which everyone would join. With the Democratic League not joining yet, because they're not under a demand to do so. Well, with France basically doing, nothing. Time is getting on the essence, which is a big deal. And at this point, a non-aggression pact with Italy is signed. And Italy decides to join the war. Yep. Italy has just joined. Under the agreement, they get to connect both sides of their empire together, which is agreed upon. Because Italy does join. Which leads to a democratic problem. With both sides occupying their halves. See? You darken the colors, just not to mix up with the puppets. I'm going to do this for their occupation, and to not mess up with anything. Well, the Italians and their allies will use this. But the Democratic League getting a serious note when the people in Eastern Asia are attacked. This was the beginning of the war, actually. With this being the Democratic Alliance's entrance to the war, which came at it with one cost. The rest of Italy and its allies join. But at this point, as you can tell, the favor is not really in either side. Right now, it's technically in the other teams, but the favor is hard to see as these nations quickly join. And due to Italian plans being sent, their first goal of these nations is to invade Panama. Why would that be? Because, let's look at Panama. Strategically located. And then they are told to start their advance into the Guianas in Brazil and Paraguay. With Paraguay falling rather fast and Brazil being invaded slowly. With a stalemate in South America, Americans right now are planning what to do here. With all of Africa on the blue team, that's about to change, they see, as Middle Africa has been carved up. But at this point, if we look at it, Thailand is there ready for fighting. But the problem is most nations are not on the communist side. But with a failure for the control over Denmark, as this being a big failure, an important failure at that. As with Denmark gone, the strait has opened up. And yeah, Denmark having begun. And yeah, this war into Denmark is in complete favor of the communists. And communism has an upper hand right now, but at this point, it's not the best upper hand. Because they managed to take out Denmark, and then the upper hand doesn't go into Russia because Finland's in the way. Although that's where the Winter War begins, I guess you could call it. With the front being secured in many areas, just to keep this stable. They then use it to shoot across up to Norway. And they take their Arctic coast. Do they really need coastline of the Arctic Ocean? Not really. With northern Finnish territories being the places to fall, as Finland's well off defending itself. With the collapse of Norway eventually happening, there's no control over it, which gives them control of a lot. With the invasion of Benelux beginning, with the top Netherlands part and moving into the Belgian part. With battles breaking out across the front. France is steamrolled. Not only that, but southern France is too. Where are the Allies having success? I mean, really nowhere. But this is where America finally gets ready for its plan, which is a landing in Panama by the Panama Canal. With the American forces now securing Panama, they're ready to go on the offensive. Why are they going on the offensive? Because they are now. The United States offensive being mainly in the north. This probably won't be all of the World War II because it's going to be long, but yeah. With this part of Grand Columbia falling, the Americans are focused here, and then it's seen as a way to have some success. They invade Iran and Afghanistan. Why both? Because they do. With Xinjiang being powerful, but being a weaker one, along with Mongolia. With the Russians ready for the invasion over here, towards Beijing. Which, if they do manage to take Beijing, this would be a big defeat for the Americans. But I kind of don't exactly succeed, but like the forces here are not as high in numbers as in elsewhere, with small successes being seen. But at this point, it's the fall of France. And yeah, they can remake borders and stuff, so I think we could change some borders during this war. When the fall of France happened, they decide in this timeline to have a treaty to divide areas over. And Italy is like, sure. At this point, it's really just Italy that's really having the success on its team. With France basically surrendering to the Germans. Germany, Italy, and Everett comes up with a plan for dividing these countries. But in reality, it pretty much stays the same. With the Chinese front starting to not do so well. But that's mostly due to the fact that they're also invading the less populated areas. Meaning there's less resistance. But yeah, there's still some. With British India and China making an invasion attempt into Xinjiang, which goes pretty well, but, goes as well as it does. With Italy sending support over to its allies, it's becoming harder and harder. And then most of the colonies are working together to help stop this evil. With Gran Colombia's dreams of being grand being pretty much crushed. With Gran Colombia being a power, but now is looking weak. Bolivia and Peru are questioning if they should unite, but then they realize they're in a bit of a pickle at this point, which they managed to hold the front up in Gran Colombia, but at this point, really, Gran Colombia is falling. With Brazil getting enough supplies from America to launch a counteroffensive. And with Bolivia being so caught off guard, their forces are routed out of Paraguay, out of former Paraguayan land. And Brazil even routes them a bit. This is South America trying to put itself back together, guys. It's a big deal for South America. Gran Colombia finally falling, Peru's big offensive ends. But there's a stalemate created. Peru is what's left, with projects on nuclear research, but they're not working like an hour timeline. Because something is off, and they don't know which country it is, but somebody's sending assassins for whoever is doing it. Nobody's sure who. There's ideas that it may be Ireland, Switzerland, Sweden, because they're neutral, and they think one of those has time traveled. Not sure who. Maybe Uruguay or Chile or Argentina, or maybe even the Thunder Dragon itself, Bhutan. With Israel being pro-democracy, there's a chance to overthrow its democratic roots and launch offensives further. And yeah, this is probably just part 1 of World War II. And then, depending on how it goes, we'll still be in season 1, though. But this Israeli offensive knocking Israel back. With nationalism not being a worry by the Allies, really, because the only nationalistic nation is Italy. And nationalism in this timeline isn't the same as ours. Well, with Italy's offensive into Tunisia going really well, getting into Libya, and lands over there. With Spain being more so pro them, with this being the African campaign actually goes well because it's more coordinated than when the No Germans did it. With Egypt being the biggest deal, even in the Libya they move. But they're really worried about trying to secure what they have taken. Italy isn't so much as concerned of this because they think they have the right to free reign. The Americans still being focused on South America. Now came time for their second attack. And yeah. And so, with the success here being that they are completely kicked out of Brazil, Brazil uses this land to start a counter-offensive. They move down and they capture the city of Lima, and they keep moving to the coast after taking Lima. And the Americans ready for their offensive, and they take Quito. And so they continue down south. Until an encirclement is managed to be made here. This encirclement causes the fall of these two countries, basically. They just fall after. As their militaries were crumbled and they were pushed all the way out. Although this may be the East, with Finland still holding back somehow, even though they're all starving, basically. But yeah. And then moving back. And nobody knows where they're getting supplies or how. With them seeing something. Iran's front was open for an invasion. And America helps us out. But nobody, even if somebody came from the future, would even know what's going on. Except they would have the technology. And then, yeah. With them moving close to the city of Algiers in the Algerian area, which they managed to do, Spain decides it's a good time to join this war, as they have their militaries prepared and everything, and they even got land already. So they pick Italy's side, because Italy sold the land to them. With the imperialist nations being the ones that are struggling the most in Europe, basically. They have the least land. But the communists ready for a renewed offensive into these lands. At this point, they create a Israeli puppet, which is communist. But yeah, with communist China really being restored, with them ready to draw borders for communist China, the war in China is starting to become less costly. But just because that doesn't mean it's great. Yeah, the Soviets don't need to send as much weapons over there if they have like a Chinese state fighting against China. They basically have a civil war going on. But will anybody else get involved? Who knows? There's attacks on America that caused American intervention. With the Allies seeing how weak Italy and Spain is and how they're getting really weak all of a sudden, they do this. But they can't get any further, and then they realize they can't get back in Africa unless they can occupy more land. So what they think is the best idea is to invade, yep, you heard it right, Russia. Which basically means now they're fighting a two-front war. And yes, there was some troops. Germany, as they see the offensive is there, moves in to cut this area off Italy, making supply lines harder, and they move down. Meanwhile, Italy and Spain do something questionable. They do this. Which, this really didn't work so well for them, as the cause of these nations went wrong. And the end of this war hasn't happened. There has been some border changes, but yeah. That's just because there has been. With the fall of a big chunk of Italy and the movement south of Switzerland, they quickly do this too, to not let Britain get in. Or France, because France still exists, just in a different continent. With communist Italy being established by the communists. But yeah, they may have Italy done something too, but like, what will they do with all this land now? As this is only the first part of this war, we're only going to see not all of it, because this video is already really long, so yeah. And with the eventual fall of this, they move into Portugal. Portugal falls to communism too. Now for the establishment of the two communist countries. The first part of this war beginning. So offensive into Morocco. And there's two. One in Morocco and one in Tunisia. Their speed is questionable at best, but it's a nice size push. And the effectiveness is yet to be seen, but they're securing their lands and moving for control over the Mediterranean. And they move down even further into the Libyan areas, hoping to establish more. Japan gets involved later, but probably will. And so let's look at the Chinese front. Well, the push here, they're stalemate up there. But the world does know that the Russians have reestablished this Chinese front. And so they basically are losing on this front. But Japan's seeing opportunity, but not ready yet. to join. Their goal is to take as much land from China as they can. But as you can see over here, America is still figuring out what to do with it. So at this point, let's just use this for occupation, this blue. It kind of looks like the water, not to be lying, but yeah. That's Saudi Arabia feeling threatened on its border, but not doing anything, just stay neutral. And as you can see, a lot has happened in this video, including German expansion on the map, because Germany changed borders around. So did Israel becoming a puppet, Bulgaria expanding, Greece a puppet, Italy a puppet, and Iberia became a puppet. France is 2 puppets. Germany's much bigger. Norway is a puppet, and yeah. The world isn't doing so well. But I would say in the next video, we will see how this war ends and continues. That's pretty much all for today's video. Please like and subscribe. This is part 1 of World War II. And it'll be 2 parts because, well, it's so much fighting to be mapped. So it's going to be a long video if I continued. I could, but it would also be too long of a video and people would lose interest. That's pretty much all for today's video. Please like and subscribe. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. That's all for today's video pretty much. So please like, subscribe, and comment. Why should you subscribe? Because we're about 40 subscribers away from our goal of 1,000 subscribers by September 1st. So please subscribe. That's all for today's video. Wild Mapper out, but not until you subscribe. Bye, guys.